Morning everybody, thanks very much. It's lovely to be here in Galway. Came down this morning with my pal Ed Kelly. The reason I'm here is because I was asked by John Keogh, the unsinkable John Keogh, some months ago. I said to Ed, he made me an offer I couldn't understand, and I'm here this morning in Galway. I'm actually involved with Connacht Rugby, so I come down here quite regularly, and one of the things we do is we connect Connacht Rugby with their diaspora around the world. And when Connacht play, for example, they played Harlequins in London some months ago, we put on an event there. We brought in a couple of hundred people in London and from the area who have an interest in Connacht. They wouldn't have shown up if Munster, Ulster or Leinster were playing, but they have a great connection to Connacht. The world of diaspora, which I'm going to talk about, is all about a sense of place. I do this with a little bit of nervousness because I spoke last night at an event in Dublin, and this lady came up to me afterwards and she said, "Mr. Aikins, you are terrific, you are absolutely superfluous." And I thought it would put me in my place. And I'm going to talk about networking, obviously, but I'm going to talk about diaspora. My colleague and partner, Ed Kelly, is going to really focus and drill down on networking when he speaks at lunchtime today. And I think we'll leave you with, as John said, some really very precise takeaways and things that you can start to do literally tomorrow morning in this world of networking. And I, if you like, am going to sort of talk about 80,000 feet. As I said, I've been involved in this world of diaspora. And diaspora is, I think, a pretty ugly word. I think until recently most people in Ireland thought it was something you took two of with a headache. It's sort of an unpleasant kind of word. But it traces its origins back to the 5th century when the Jews were exiled from Babylon. And diaspora, which is in fact a Greek word, it's actually two words, dia meaning over and spiro meaning scattering, is associated with Israel and with the Jews and with their exile and with the Jewish diaspora around the world. I'm going to talk a little bit about Israel and what they have done and what perhaps we might be able to do. I'm going to talk a bit about India, China, Taiwan, the other countries which are better than Ireland in this space. I also have to say, as a disclaimer, I'm a founder member of a group called CASE, and CASE stands for Copy and Steal Everything. I go around the world and figure out what other countries have done really, really well. I'm also going to make two very fundamental points. Firstly, I don't think there is such a thing as an Irish diaspora. I don't think it exists. I think there are hundreds of Irish diasporas. And when you accept that, you also have to accept that you need different networking strategies and different ways of connecting with them. I'm also going to say that this notion of, what can the diaspora do for Ireland is the wrong question. The question we should be asking is, what can we do for the diaspora? And if we get our heads around that and approach it in that sort of frame of mind, then we will get back greatly. And Ed at lunchtime will talk about that whole concept of giving rather than getting. However, the elephant in the room is, of course, the economic collapse and meltdown of this country. And so I dug out some headlines before I came down here. And here are the headlines, I wrote them down. Firstly, death of a tiger. Secondly, bank bailout. Next is property collapse. Next is unemployment and emigration. And all of those headlines were taken from Asia in 1997. And I was in Singapore a few months ago, and the place is absolutely on fire. And the whole of Asia and Asia Pacific is absolutely charging. And so I think it's one of those things we've got to keep in perspective when we look at what's happening now. And I accept the awfulness of this financial problem that we have, but I do like the American expression which says, what the fat boy does in the canoe affects everybody. And I think if you think of that analogy, this financial meltdown and banking crisis we have is obviously affecting us all. But there's a ton of other people in the canoe who are paddling like crazy and doing really great things, and I see and hear it every single day. And I think we all in our heart of hearts accept that the trajectory that we were on during the Celtic Tiger years was totally and utterly unsustainable, borrowing extremely cheap European money to invest in property, to sell to each other. It was an unproductive economic model that we had. It could not possibly continue. And to put it in a slightly amusing sense, I read some time ago about the fact that when Elvis Presley died, there were 150 Elvis impersonators in the world. And at the last count, a study done by a Danish university, there was 250,000 Elvis impersonators in the world. And if you take that growth and you project it into the future, in the year 2050, 1 in 3 people in the world will be an Elvis impersonator. So just look around you and figure out who are the people in your row. So yes, it is a very, very difficult situation that we're in. And I always remember the quote by Winston Churchill in the height of the Battle of Britain when he said, the situation, he said, is serious but not desperate. And in Ireland we tend to say that the situation is desperate but not serious. But I think we accept just how tough it is. And I think it's been made tougher by the fact that it's been grey and miserable and wet every day throughout the whole of August and September. And I was in a taxi driver last night, and he said, oh yes, he said, we've had an Iraqi summer in Dublin. And I said, what do you mean by an Iraqi summer? He said, well, it's been partly Sunni and mostly Shiite. So I think that you get a sense of what. I wanted to start really by going up to, if I like, 80,000 feet and asking a really fundamental question, which is what made China the world's great manufacturing center? What made India a technology hub? What made Israel the second largest VC market in the world, an incredible center of innovation? And what helped bring peace to Northern Ireland? And the answer to all those three questions, I believe, is the same. And the answer is networking with their diasporas in the United States. That was the thing that really transformed those countries. And it really has been quite dramatic. And I'm going to give you, just on the last one, on the Irish one, a little example, because when I was with the Ireland Funds, I was with them for 21 years in total, in Australia and the United States. In 1997, I got approached by some people from Northern Ireland saying, could we help to get the leaders from Northern Ireland to meet and spend some time with Nelson Mandela in South Africa. My boss was a guy called Tony O'Reilly, who was involved in newspapers there, and he had his connections in through Mandela. There was also another rugby connection through Johnny Robbie, who was a great Irish rugby player who went out and became a legend in South Africa, a member of the Irish diaspora. He runs Radio 702, which is on every morning in South African radio. He is the Terry Wogan and Gay Byrne of South Africa, but an Irish guy from Greystones. And so we arranged to bring these leaders from Northern Ireland, all these leaders from all sides, and two of them are First Minister and Deputy First Minister today. We brought them to South Africa. But this was 1997. They would not fly together. They would not travel to Arnest in the military camp together. They would not stay in accommodation together and wait for it. They would not meet Nelson Mandela together. We had to go to Nelson Mandela and say, we have this system in Northern Ireland, you know, which is called apartheid. It keeps people apart. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but this is the way it works in Northern Ireland. And he said, he smiled and laughed and said, of course, I will address them separately. So he addressed the Sinn Féin and the SDLP people. He addressed them separately from the DUP and the official Unionist Party separately. As always with Things Irish, there was an amusing episode. The DUP saw inside the quarters where the Sinn Féin group were staying and realised and discovered that Sinn Féin had a larger bar. And when we went to them and said, yes, I know that, but you guys don't drink. They said, that's not the point. They have a larger bar than we do, and so we had to sort that one out. Interestingly enough, we used Cyril Ramaphosa, the head of the ANC, and Rolf Meyer, the head of the National Party, who had come together after this bloody conflict in South Africa and come to a peaceful resolution of their differences, and the rest is history. We used them with the two different groups at this conference. 1 year later, the Good Friday Agreement was signed, and every one of those leaders from Northern Ireland will tell you, Jeffrey Donaldson told me this just a few weeks ago, he said, that was the event, and that was the opportunity which broke the logjam that began the process that resulted in the Good Friday Agreement. And it was all about networking, it was about using our Irish diaspora, and it was about bringing about the start of a peaceful resolution